Hi, welcome back, listeners, to Life in Motion. I'm your host, Grace Becker. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and enthusiast of life, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Lucas Mitzel. Hi, Lucas. How are you doing today? Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on today. Lucas is a licensed independent clinical social worker who I work with. He provides therapy to children, adolescents, and young adults. He also has a lot of hobbies. He likes to play dinosaurs with his kid.
Yes.
Yeah. He hikes. That's something that we have in common. He likes to hike a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm jealous of the places that you've been that I have not yet been.
Where have you all been?
Well, I've been to Banff.
Okay.
I've done a lot of hiking out in Minnesota, and I've done a lot of stuff out in the West Coast, like Vancouver Island.
Ooh.
Which you can be jealous of that because
I am jealous of that one.
That is beautiful out there. So yeah, lots of mountains. Just went snowshoeing last month on a mountain. It was great.
Yeah, that snowshoeing, hiking, I guess, is something I've always wanted to do.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's a little weird with the, like, because the snowshoes, they're big, right? And so it can be a little bit awkward at first. But if you like hiking, you would love snowshoeing. Yeah. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's not, you don't sink in with like your pack or anything on, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. We were on top of like 12 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And stuff, like we were walking over bridges that like we were way above the railing because of how much snow there was, and you don't sink at all.
See, and I think it would take me a little bit of getting used to that because I have always been taught don't climb over snow piles when you're hiking,
right?
Because you don't know like if you could like slip, fall, get hurt, or like sink in or whatever. And I would be like, I don't trust it.
Yeah.
Snowshoes don't work. Yeah. I don't believe you.
You don't step next to the trees because then you'll sink in.
Yeah.
But as long as you stay like on the trail or whatever, it's totally fine.
Okay. That's good to know.
You should do it sometime. It's a lot of fun.
I would love to do that. Yeah. What places that I've gone that you are interested in?
Well, didn't you go to Zion?
I did. I did just go to Zion last summer. Yeah.
Like, that's a bucket list. So I'm really jealous of that. And then you've been to Montana.
Yes, Glacier, and I also kind of like 40 miles south of Yellowstone as well.
Yeah. See,
yeah.
I'm jealous. I want to go there.
I used to like do tour guide stuff out in the backcountry.
Oh, cool.
In Montana for a summer, yeah.
Like you were the tour guide, or you would go and...
both. Like it was like a camp that people would come to.
Oh, that's sweet.
And so we would like rotate who stays with people on the site to do like activities, do whatever, and who would take people out. But some of the longest ones I would go with, like take people out on, was a week long.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, like 6 days. Yeah, it was really fun. It was some of the best memories I ever made.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah, and it was also really hard because when you're taking people out, you have to kind of go at their pace, and they're not acclimated to the elevation. And some people, they've never done it before. Some people have
it's so
first time, so it can be a challenge too.
Yeah, they overestimate their own abilities, maybe, or underestimate the trail.
Yeah, one of the other. Yeah, definitely. Well, how has your week been?
It's been good. Yeah. It's been busy. I just, this time of year is just always really busy around here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Really, I feel like I've been getting some cancellations or no-shows. I don't know if the weather, just people are like, I want to be outside.
Fair. Yeah. I feel like the springtime we really start to amp up. And so, and I think my people are maybe starting a little bit early.
Oh, sure. Yep.
But yeah, typically like around April, it starts to get real busy around here. So starting to feel it already.
I did just discover today that I have been moisturizing my hands with what I thought was lotion, but is actually hair conditioner.
I don't even know what I think about that.
Well, it's up there on
That's amazing.
And I got it at Walmart, and I went in the lotion aisle, and I saw the flavor was like strawberry something. I was like, oh, that sounds such a good...
The flavor. Grace.
The scent.
We're not supposed to eat it.
That's the wrong podcast.
Our next episode is on pica.
Pica. Eats lotion. My strange addiction.
Right.
But I because I was using it today, and I've been using it for like a month, Lucas.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is such a fucking weird consistency.
Yeah.
It was strange. For people who can't see us, Lucas is bald, so he doesn't know.
Yeah, I don't know that struggle.
Is that offensive?
Not at all.
Okay, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No.
But conditioner is not meant for your hands.
Yes.
It says moisturizing on that, so I think that's why I thought it was lotion.
That makes sense.
And I was just looking at it, and it was one of those moments where it was so funny and so embarrassing that I said I have to hold myself accountable and share this with people so that they can also mock me for it. So, yeah.
Because nothing's more healthy than having people mock you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it humbles me, like.
Well, it's good to stay humble.
Using conditioner as lotion.
I love that.
Yeah. As soon as I found that out today, I was like, I'm sharing that on the podcast.
Yeah,
that's something good to share with gold. Everybody.
That's great.
Yeah. But today, Lucas and I are going to be talking about a topic that I know that Lucas is very passionate about, and something that I also am very fascinated with, and that is religious trauma. Yeah. Very heavy topic. I'm sure we could do multiple episodes on that alone. But we're going to be talking about, what it is. We're going to be doing some maybe personal, professional reflection, case studies, how it might show up in a person's life, and how to cope with if you've been affected by religious trauma, how to have relationships with people who hold different religious views than you, and all the things in between.
Yeah, so, it's a big topic.
It really is. It is a very big topic. Yeah. And I think too, it's like to start off like talking about like that religion can be very beneficial to many people's lives.
Yeah.
It can definitely help people make sense of the world, answers those big life questions, builds a community, can bring comfort and healing in a traumatic world. But the question that Lucas and I are going to be discussing is, when does that line become religion is the source of trauma? Right. Yeah. So, yeah. Lucas, do you want to start us off by kind of describing religious trauma?
Yeah. And I think I love that you started off with that, that kind of disclaimer, because this conversation is not about whether or not certain religious beliefs or practices are true or anything like that. It's not about that all believers are a certain way. That's not what this is about. It's about when certain, there are consequences to certain beliefs, actions, and attitudes on individuals that are based in religion. And that is where religious trauma comes from. And so, we can have, the psychological abuse or trauma that is just religious based, if you will. So, in a nutshell, it's like anything with PTSD, but with a religious background.
Yeah.
Right? So, so psychologically speaking, I should maybe back up a little bit, but I'm also, just because I am really passionate about this, both because of personal experiences and because of some of the clients that I've worked with, and I've learned a lot about this over the years of working with people. I've become really a part of some online communities that address this and really try to support one another and share their stories and give voices to victims and all of those things. So I have stories for days of what people have been through, or different examples of some of these things. So when you look at, I think a lot of people, when they think of religious trauma, they think of physical or sexual abuse, right? We've all heard the news articles of some pastor or priest who's perpetrating on a child or things like that. Yes, that counts as religious trauma, absolutely. But there's a more insidious form of religious trauma that I think needs to be addressed, and is probably what we're going to be focusing on the most in this conversation.
Yeah.
So an example of psychological trauma, there's a story, one of my really good friends, they were part of a church that would do something called Antichrist drills.
Oh, Antichrist drills?
Yeah, yeah.
What does that entail?
So they would all. So here's the situation. Set the tone here. It is the apocalypse is happening, right? Christianity has become illegal, and so they are doing and keep in mind, these kids are like 12, 13, 14 years old.
Are these the people on your online communities that you were talking about?
Yeah, this is just somebody that I know who shared this
okay.
story.
Yeah.
And a great example of some like psychological abuse. And so it's this time like during the end of times, and Christianity is illegal. They're trying to like practice Christianity, but like in private. So they are all like hiding in like the church basement with the lights off and candles, and they're like reading their Bibles and stuff. And then they hear noises upstairs, so they all like blow the candles out and they all hush, whatever. And then it's silent, so they go back and start reading again. And then finally, what ends up happening is these guys from the church will start pounding down the stairs and will grab the kids, rip them out of the room, line them up against the wall, and grab a fake gun and put it up against their heads and ask them to deny Jesus.
Oh.
And then if they don't, which none of them do because it's all just a drill, right? You're supposed to be doing these things. Then they will yell bang and shoot you, and you have to pretend to be dead on the floor.
Oh my God, to kids?
To kids, yeah. Like these kids, they're like 12, 13, 14 years old when they're doing this.
Yeah. And are they like, so the people who are doing this, taking this fake gun and doing, like lining these kids up, were these kids raised in this?
Yeah. Like this is just a normal thing that they would do for their youth group. Yeah. And all of the people involved are all part of the church. They were all like leaders in the church doing this, and it was all this big test, and they're trying to like get them all ready for like, you don't deny Jesus, and like if you do, like, and it was terrifying to these kids. And this idea that like I could die and like practicing that on a child is just it causes a lot of harm to the individual that was telling me this story.
Absolutely.
And we bringing it back to something that's not religious, like our lockdown drills, for example, are traumatizing to kids. And we have kids who experience nightmares and all that stuff from those lockdown drills. So, and this seems way worse to me than a just normal lockdown drill, right? So that's a pretty extreme example of some psychological abuse that maybe goes on.
But also very interesting because it's antichrist. And I feel, or in my experience, when I've talked about religious trauma, it's very the same idea, different flavor. Yeah. Like it's traumatizing and it's within a religion, but when I've heard of it, it's like you have to believe in Christ, like accept, and otherwise like you're damned for hell. Yeah,
that's another example of of something that can be traumatizing to somebody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've talked to many kids who have what's called hell anxiety, where they're having nightmares, they're scared to go to sleep because they might wake up in hell, and I'm not saying that that's what's being taught to them, but that's their understanding of it, right? And I'm not even, little disclaimer too, like we're probably going to talk mostly about Christianity because that's the popular religion. Yes, that's
what I have heard the most often the case with is Christianity. Absolutely, yeah. Good disclaimer.
But you can find religious trauma in any religion. It is not just Christianity. It's just that's the predominant religion in our area. So that's
and
what
Western
we know.
Culture. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's also like, there's a lot of shame that can happen in religion. Yeah. You know? And thinking that you're not good enough or having this idea that you are just inherently flawed. Yes. Right? I mean, if you walk around thinking you're inherently flawed, that's like a huge precursor to depression or anxiety. Yep. Right? It's like you're being almost primed for that.
Yes, absolutely. I have so many adults that I work with who maybe they don't even like practice whatever religion they were brought up with anymore, but it still has such a huge impact on them that like they had the message that I have some clients who are like, I'm damned for hell because I'm gay, or I had premarital sex, so I'm like, Christ no longer loves me. Yeah. And it is partially like fear mongering. Absolutely. Like these places, these religions, part of it is that is kind of a motive of instilling this fear into people kind of to not get them to do it. Don't have premarital sex. So just like, because you're going to go to hell. So let's just abstain from that.
Yeah. I mean, at worst, it's about control, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
it is very, what I would say, culty. We can talk about, I love talking about cult. We can maybe get into that later. But
Me too. I listen to true crime.
yeah. But then like, yeah, so like purity culture it has been extremely harmful to a lot of people and caused a lot of stunting when it comes to sexual development.
Yes.
And that you were kind of touching on that there a little bit, where you have to abstain from sex, and if you're not, then you're dirty, you're broken, you're whatever, right? And that there's a lot of shame that I've had so many tears in my office from some poor kid who's like, I had sex and I am a horrible person now. And it's like, oh, buddy, no.
That's not the case.
No, you are not broken because of that.
Yeah, it definitely can. It's linked to sexual dysfunction, fear of intimacy, body dysmorphia, and low self-esteem. I see it in individuals. I see it in couples. I've even talked about it with families before too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it leads to, and I mean, this could be an entire podcast itself too, but like the abstinence only type of rhetoric tends to lead to more unprotected sex, higher rates of STDs or STIs, as they're called now, I think.
I think they're called STIs now.
Yeah. And more pregnancies because you're not taught birth control. You're not taught contraception and stuff like that. So it does the opposite of what they're hoping for.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Physically, physical trauma that can also happen isn't just like some clergy or person in the church like causing physical harm, but also like there's a large movement in many churches to encourage victims of domestic violence to stay in the marriage, right?
Because divorce is a sin.
Because divorce is a sin. And women should be subservient to men and should be just following their leadership.
Yeah.
Quotes.
Many like people who marry people together will say like, do you like to obey your husband?
Yeah.
And that is wild to me. To obey? No thanks.
Yeah. You must submit to your husbands. Yeah.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. And I think, there are lots of churches that have very different views of what those passages mean, and they really push for equality in marriage, and like and that stuff's great. And there are also, on the flip side, there are people who I've heard speak talking about how women shouldn't have jobs, women shouldn't get educated, women shouldn't be able to vote. Like there's all ranges of spectrum there.
Right.
And it can be really detrimental, obviously, to going back to staying in an abusive marriage. That could just be really harmful to people, obviously.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And it's not an official diagnosis within the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, but religious trauma syndrome has been studied as a condition that shares many similarities with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and often complex PTSD, and it can result from experiences with, like we were talking earlier, the controlling, a fear-based like mongering, and high demand in religious environments. And it often mimics a lot of PTSD symptoms, like
absolutely
intrusive thoughts, nightmares, anxiety and panic attacks, guilt, shame. We talked about those ones a lot. And those tend to go hand in hand, the guilt and the shame. Difficulty trusting themselves, others, hypervigilance, and fear of punishment.
Yeah.
Like all of it. They mimic a lot. They do. See it all the time.
Yeah. And it is just a lot more hidden, I find, in people. And it comes out in very like quiet ways most of the time. It can come out very loudly, if you want to put it that way, like where like sometimes PTSD can be really loud in that you're having full-blown flashbacks and like intrusive thoughts that way. Whereas with religious trauma, it could be as simple as your internal thoughts in a certain situation, or maybe you just feel really uncomfortable in like a church for some reason, right? And you don't even have to know why, but like just hearing somebody talk about whatever religion is like, you just feel like nauseous or gross or whatever. That's because there's probably been some religious trauma happening, and your body is responding to that. We say this all the time. The body knows.
Yes,
right?
The body keeps the score.
Body keeps
whatever.
the score.
Yeah,
you know? And that's so true. Like we have these what are called somatic symptoms, and it's our body telling us that something's wrong here, and our brain is, for better or worse, really good at picking up on patterns. And so if it is associating the religious messages or the location or whatever with being unsafe, it's going to tell you to like, you need to be on edge here.
Right.
And that's what you're feeling.
Absolutely. And kind of also going back to what you were talking about earlier with whether it's that controlling abuse factor and when it's in combination with religious trauma, sometimes the person's afraid to talk about it because it's been instilled in them that you don't talk about this. You don't talk about it with people. So even just getting a person to open up about it and their experience is very difficult for them.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Yeah. And there's actually there's a term that there's a term called spiritual bypassing. And this is where we use spiritual practices or beliefs to transcend or deny problems rather than understanding and trying to change them. So we might use things like God's ways are higher than ours, or like God works in mysterious ways, or like who are you to question God? One that I was always told a lot was like who is the clay to say to the potter what should be done, right? That's a very famous like Romans 9 sort of conversation or like passage that gets shared.
This is going to be turning into my own session on my personal religious trauma. I've heard so many of those, but I've never heard it called, what do you call it, bypassing religious?
Spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing, yeah.
Yeah, you're bypassing a problem by taking some sort of spiritual lens to it and just flat out ignoring it.
Yeah, you're avoiding it. You're not like taking control of what you have control over. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine there is too a line of, because like when we started at the top of the episode, that religion can be that source of like peace for some people for those big life questions like what's after death kind of thing.
Right.
But I imagine there is that line of when it's become that and when has it become you avoiding serious issues in your life and just kind of, quote unquote, leaving it to God.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. That's a really, really great point because yes, people use spiritual bypassing all the time in healthy ways. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And somebody who maybe it would be an atheist would also say, I have no idea why this is happening either. Right. But it makes you feel good to think, well, God has a plan. All this, I don't know what it is, but I trust whatever. That's spiritual bypassing. And that's fine. Totally fine. It's unhealthy, though, when we're like, okay, why am I depressed? Well, it's because I'm being punished and I need to just pray more. And if I just pray more and be a better Christian or whatever religious affiliation you have, then I'll get better. You're religiously bypassing your mental health, and we can work through that with, and you're not getting punished.
Yeah.
It's just your brain's not working right. So that would be an unhealthy way to have some religious bypassing, or having somebody tell you like you need to stay with your husband because even though they're abusive, because divorce is a sin. That's a type of spiritual bypassing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, like religious doctrines that emphasize things like hell, divine punishment, or the end of the times can create a persistent sense of fear, which can lead to things like obsessive compulsive techniques and panic attacks and generalized anxiety and PTSD, like a whole source of things. So if there are these like religions that are emphasizing like hell, divine punishment, the end of times, all these things, I don't see how people can't realize, that's going to create a lot of fear and hypervigilance for people.
Right.
And they're not going to know who to trust. They're not going to know if they can trust themselves. They're going to feel that every little thing that they're doing is going to cause them this huge damnation.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting you bring up you don't know who you can trust. Well, like people who are in high control groups, or otherwise known as cults, there are lots of churches who display many of these cult-like behaviors or characteristics of a high control group. And they're not necessarily called a cult because they're just part of some bigger branch, but just the way that they're run could be like that. And so I've had many people say like, well, my pastor doesn't, my church family or whatever doesn't like that I go to therapy because I should be only going to them for like, because it's a spiritual issue, for example. And so there's this us versus them sort of mentality.
Yeah.
And that in a situation like that is a lot about control and controlling the information and making sure that people don't go outside of your group. And that is very damaging, but is ultimately a way to control the person so that they stay in that group.
Right. Yeah. It really always does come back down to the control factor. Absolutely. I have a personal experience that I'd like to share with something that like I went through when I was younger. So I grew up Missouri Synod Lutheran, and for those who don't know, that's a denomination within Christianity where it's a group of people who follow like Lutherans' beliefs. And they're known for being very traditional and conservative, believing that the Bible is 100% true and sticking closely to old Christian teachings. And I remember maybe a month or so after my dad passed away, I was 11 years old when he passed away. And I was in a confirmation class, which is another thing that many Christian churches do, where they have kids go through teachings classes when they're roughly like in 6th to 8th grade. And they teach them about the Bible. They teach them about Lutheran beliefs. They teach them what it means to be a Christian. And once done with all the classes, there's like this huge ceremony where you confirm your faith in front of all the people in the church and your faith in Jesus. So I was in this, and it was my first year of this confirmation class. And I remember that my pastor, and the pastor would teach these classes to us, and he was talking to us about angels. And I said something along the lines of, well, my dad's an angel, and you know, even though he's not physically here with me, he can see me, he can hear me, like all these things, right? And my pastor called out to me in front of all my other classmates, and there was a bunch of us in there, and said, actually, no, Grace. Your dad cannot see you, he cannot hear you because he's with God, and God doesn't allow his angels to have contact with any sinners on earth. And Ow. And I was a little kid. I was 11 years old. I remember just my face turning red hot and bursting out into tears. And like, this was just 4 weeks after my dad had passed away. And I would remember sitting there thinking that, like, okay, this person who is supposed to be like the guy I look up to, the pastor, right? Like, kind of like God's communicator. And I thought, so you're telling me that I'm going to go throughout the rest of my life with having no like connection to my dad who passed away, and this belief that I had that my dad was with me was one of the very few things that was kind of keeping me going in my faith, to be honest. Because, you know, when you're that young, and again, that's a whole thing of you lose someone, it can really test a person's faith. And I just, like, I was squashed in that one moment. And I felt no compassion from a person who is supposed to be like the compassionate person. Yeah. Right? And yeah, that definitely created some religious trauma of my own. And it can be very difficult going, like, how do you navigate it afterwards, especially when you're 11 years old, is something you were raised with. My dad was raised in that faith, and that's what he taught me too. So it was very trialing. And I think having gone through that personally definitely makes me more empathetic to people who also like have religious trauma that they talk about too. Yeah.
Well, you're you're 11. That's a huge, like, important developmental part of your life. And you are experiencing some of the most intense grief that you probably ever will. Like, that's intense at 11 to lose your dad. And I'm really sorry that happened. Yeah. To experience that level of just lack of empathy. Yeah. In front of everyone.
In front of everybody. Yeah, that's a huge
Holy cow. That's insane.
Yeah. So it was very eye-opening to me of like, okay, whoa, let's take a step back here and see what the bigger picture is.
Yeah.
Because I know people who don't have a religious belief drop bone in their body, in their environment, anywhere around them. And they're some of the most compassionate, empathetic people. And that was something that I was kind of unconsciously taught, I would say, that people who aren't religious or didn't believe what I believed were they're not deserving people, that they're not good
they're
people.
Sinners.
They're sinners. They're not, well, everybody's sinners, right?
But they're extra sinners.
They're extra sinners. Yeah. They're not being saved. Yeah. So it felt very hypocritical. Yeah. So sometimes it takes like situations like that when a person can kind of come out of that fear and that sense of control and look at the situation for what it is.
Yeah. And that what you just described is another like control tactic, right? Mm-hmm. Because you are being taught that these other people out here are sinners and sin is evil. Mm-hmm. And so the people outside of the group are bad, mm-hmm. and then the people inside the group are good, mm-hmm. right? And so then that makes you not want to go out and it makes you assume the worst mm-hmm. in people that you don't even know. And then as you opened yourself up to more experiences with people, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't true. Mm. So,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people, even if it may not be malicious in that they're trying to do this in order to control. I think mm-hmm. that sometimes it is a byproduct of that doctrine,
right,
if you will. And it can lead to a lot of distrust of people outside of your preferred group.
Yeah. Yes. Something else too that I kind of struggled with, and not to the full extent that I think I could have, but that I've definitely heard other people struggle with, is that when you kind of come out of that haze, or you even go as far as to be like, atheist or like ex-religious or whatever the case is for whoever is going through that experience, you may struggle with authority and decision making after that. So many people who leave high-controlled religious environments may experience like decision paralysis because they were never allowed to trust their own judgment. Like I was, like, again, it was a sinner. You're a sinner. That mm-hmm. was my message that I was given, so I couldn't trust some of my own judgment. But some may also struggle with authority figures due to like those experiences with religious leaders who are kind of using that power to abuse their people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was definitely some emotional, verbal, mental abuse going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was not okay.
Yeah.
So I was raised primarily evangelical. I was also half in like a ELCA style of church, but mm-hmm. I primarily focused on the evangelical portion of things. And so I would call myself a fundamentalist Christian at one point. Okay. And so I have a lot of stories that I could share, but like, from really little, I was taught to memorize Bible passages, and like that was a very, very important thing. And mm-hmm. so much so that like growing up, I would have these Bible passages that my sibling and I would have to memorize, and then we would compete against one another to see who remembered the most, and then mm-hmm. whoever remembered the least would have more chores as a punishment.
Oh my
for that.
God.
Yeah. So I was, there was a lot of like shaming, and like there was a lot of pressure put mm-hmm. on having that sort of knowledge. And then mm-hmm. There was a bunch of things taught with that as well. But just an example of something that can be what seems to be like a good practice, like you're teaching your kids Bible verses and like all that stuff. It actually like it hurt a lot as a kid. And it's things like that I think are a little bit more insidious in people. Mm-hmm. And somebody who's listening to this that might identify as more religious, maybe, well, that's not that big of a deal. And by itself, one time, sure, you're mm-hmm. right. That's not a huge deal. But for me as an individual, like that was really hard mm-hmm. growing up for years, having to do that. And probably from the time I was in middle school all the way up till I graduated high school, I was doing that. And it's really it put a lot of pressure on, and it really hurt my brother and I's relationship.
To each other.
To each other, yeah.
Wow. Because you competed.
Because we would be resentful towards one another, right? And that just made things very difficult from time to time.
Yeah. Did you have like, I don't know if like religious leaders or people in your family that would kind of aid on that competitive factor?
No, I don't think a lot of people knew what was going on. My dad was very involved in the church as a leader, not like a pastor or anything like that, but very well known in the church and had a lot of, I would say, authority in the church.
You and I could talk.
Yeah. And so he taught a lot of classes and stuff like that, and he just has a lot of knowledge about those things.
So I'm curious then if that maybe, if you even knew at the time, but did that put pressure on you to
Absolutely.
Like, okay, I'm this religious leader in the church, like I'm their son, time to really know these verses, it's time to practice everything to the T.
Yeah. I have so much just knowledge that I've memorized from having to do that for years. And it's not a good memory.
Yeah.
To have it's not fun to think about all of those things that all the work that I put into that, and
right.
I've talked to other kids who have been going through that, or I've talked to other people who have experienced similar things where they've been put through high pressure situations to like memorize and learn and like study and all of that.
Oh yeah. I even like mine too. Like I think, not to compete the types of religions, but yours sounds especially even more conservative than mine that I grew up with. And mine, they would have us, when you were confirmed, you would also have to recite certain verses word for word. And if you mess it up, if you don't get it right, then you're not getting confirmed. Oh my God, did that instill fear?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Because not knowing that obviously means you're not Christian enough, right?
That's what the message was, at least.
Yeah. And then that's a piece of your identity. I think, one of the things that happens in these like higher control groups, so like when I talk to people who are like out, right, and they are reflecting on their time, they're like, how did I get to that point? And that's really frustrating to them. And because they're not dumb people, like they are educated, they know their stuff, and they're like, how did I ever let myself get involved in that? And it's because it's so slow that it and there's actually like they've identified it's called thought reform, and there's like a criteria that if you do this, you're going to have successful thought reform. You can shape somebody's thoughts for them, which is terrifying.
So manipulation.
Yeah.
So
like,
that's very scary.
Like the first one is milieu control. So that's where you control the person's environment, including their communication inside and outside of the group, even to the point of controlling how they think of themselves. So you're telling them what to think of themselves. Like in most extreme cases, like you are very sinful. You are a bad person. And without this, you are not going to be, those things are controlling of like how you think of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Mystical manipulation is the next criteria. So this is where you artificially contrive group experience. So you view, or you tell people to view their emotions or their experiences as mystical experiences to continuously reinforce the idea of like the mystical or a special nature of the group. So like you might see this in like some churches, they do this thing where they speak in tongues. Have you heard of that before?
Yes, I have.
And so they have these really big things that are happening in their church where like people are speaking in tongues and wailing and shouting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that makes they say that that's speaking in tongues, or like God is speaking through them, right?
I almost wonder if like you could say that about churches who have like hymns singing too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people will say that they feel like for example, like the Holy Spirit is talking to them through the music, right?
Through me, yeah.
Right. No, I'm not saying that it's not happening.
Yes.
But it's sometimes I've talked with worship pastors who've been out of the church, and in their church, not all churches, in their church, they say it is very purposefully manipulative. Like it is very planned. Yeah. And so they want you to think that way in these high control groups, because then you're going to continue to think that the group is special and want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And because, I mean, I could say this every other sentence. It always comes back down to, is the hymn, is the song, is the whatever, is it comforting? Is it something that makes you feel connected to your community or connected to your beliefs? And then when is the line of it's being used in a manipulative way? So there is a big difference that we're trying to display here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a very big difference. And like we've talked about this one a lot already, but like demand for purity is another one where it's like all or nothing thinking, us versus them mentality in the world. Like actions are either good or they're evil. Right. Yeah. And you can look at this in the most like notoriously fundamental churches, I would say. Like the NIFB is very famously like this. If you've never heard of them, I give them a Google.
Oh my God.
And trigger warning.
Yeah.
They are very much black and white, us versus them, good versus evil, that sort of thing. And that again is just to keep you in there, keep you controlled.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing to think about is like rebuilding after religious trauma. It can take years. It can take time.
Absolutely.
Recovery from religious trauma isn't about rejecting a belief system necessarily, and not for everybody, but it's more about rebuilding a sense of self, trust, personal autonomy, and therapy, support groups, self-exploration, all the things that, we were talking about a little bit earlier that some practices will try and advise you not to do, can help with that healing process.
Yeah. And I love how you said that it's sometimes, it's not for everybody that means that you're getting out of the religion.
Yes.
That is, thank you for saying that, because lots of people think that it's all or nothing, right? Like we were just talking about, there's this all or nothing thinking, and it's not like that. So you can, sometimes it's just reshaping what your beliefs are while you still hold on to this core faith or whatever. And that's wonderful. I love that for you, right? But other times for some people, it's they get rid of it altogether, or it completely changes into something else. And that's great for them, right? We just need to, it's about facilitating that process of helping them tear down some of those unhealthy thought patterns that are causing the distress, and then rebuilding identities, like you had mentioned, or like just rebuilding healthy thought patterns and emotional distress and or distress tolerance, like emotional regulation, right?
Yes.
Not trying to build more distress. But it takes time.
It does.
I want to say for every year you've been in like a high control group, it takes like 3 or 4 years of working on it to get out of it. Like I don't quote me on that, but it's a significant amount of time. And the deeper you are in, the harder it is to get it all out. So, and you'll find yourself as you are trying to like pick up this all apart. If you are somebody who's going through this, you will find that there's going to be a moment where like you think you're good, and then all of a sudden you're just driving in the car, and then just something hits you, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was, oh my God, that was part of this.
Yep.
Shit.
Yep. It can just be really out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's like, damn it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Something that I love to say to clients and to people is that it didn't get this way overnight, so it's not going to fix itself overnight.
Yes. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, therapy is a wonderful way to work through these things. And it is not our job to tell you what to believe.
No.
That's not what we do. That's not the goal here. It is our job to help you figure out what you believe and help you be okay with that in a healthy manner, right? And maybe challenge some unhealthy beliefs that are harming you, trying to figure out where those are coming from, what's bothering you, and then reshape that so that it feels better. But it's not about taking away your beliefs or anything like that. I do not care what you believe as long as you are happy and healthy,
not hurting yourself, not hurting anyone else. Yes.
As long as we're following those like 3 or 4 major things, yep. I'm good with whatever you believe.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
Absolutely. I'm very glad that you said that, because I think that is something that is taught, is that don't go to whatever group, whatever therapist, whoever, because they're going to try and tell you what to do. That's absolutely not the goal of a therapist, is to tell you what to do or what to believe. It's the opposite. It's to help you decide for yourself, to help guide you.
So if you are aware that like it is really important to you that you have a non-religious therapist, it is okay to ask for that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people feel weird about being like super picky. Mm-hmm. And there are people who specifically do what is considered like Christian counseling or like religious counseling or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you need to stay away from that, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Please do. You shouldn't be triggered when you're at therapy.
Yeah. And if you're concerned about it, say it to your therapist. Like say like, hey, this is what I've always been taught. I'm just kind of nervous about it.
Right. Yeah.
Bring it up.
Yeah. So, and then if you've got some religious trauma, you know that you got some religious trauma, there are tons of different types of trauma therapies that you can help out with this. And to learn different skills to manage the triggers and the concerns that might be coming up. It is the nice thing about trauma, if there is a nice thing about trauma, working with it, is that you can all but fix it. Like that's the really nice thing about it. It's not like a bipolar disorder, which is going to stay with you forever. You can treat it and make it so that you maybe don't feel the symptoms all the time, but you still have to take medications and stuff like that forever. It's very, very treatable, which is really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other ways that this might be a loaded question, that you would advise someone to either process, prevent, or work through religious trauma?
Find safe people to talk to. Find people that are going to be validating to you. You do not need to justify your trauma to people. So if you first of all, if you don't want to share your story, don't share it. A lot of people are a little nosy and are like, well, what happened to you? Why don't you want to come back to church or whatever? Like, you don't have to share your story with people.
Yeah, set boundaries. You don't owe them that.
It is totally fine. And you know what it's like to live your story. Nobody else does. And so it doesn't matter if you were to tell me that and I would be like, yeah, that wasn't that big of a deal. It doesn't matter what I think. It was a big deal to you. Yeah. And that's what matters. Yeah. So please, I don't want you to feel like you have to justify it. And if you're around people who are invalidating, drop them, because if you can, right? Like, that is not something you need. So if you're it's important to talk about it. It's important to get it out, but around people who are validating. That's why therapists can be awesome. If you have family and friends who've been through that, that's great. There's a lot of online communities right now that are really focused on this sort of thing. And you can reach out to those people and get support that way. You are not alone in this. But if you've been in a high control group, they want you to think you are. And that's what, it can be really, really hard. So, I just encourage people to keep talking, to keep sharing your story where you feel like you're comfortable and you can get validation, and never stop working on it.
Yeah. I love that you started off at the top of like, find somewhere safe. Just find a person who you feel comfortable and safe with talking to about this, because it can be challenging sometimes to come to it on your own, to do that on your own. But if you do that on your own, or you're doing it with another person, it can be good to first just acknowledge your experience, kind of go through all the things that have happened. Hopefully that other person is validating and supportive. Because religious trauma, it is very real. And if others try to downplay it, if you choose to share your very vulnerable experience, like you were saying, get rid of that person. That's not a good person for you. And I think not enough people give themselves permission to grieve the loss of, like, beliefs, community, or identity too. Because it is...
Yeah, that's huge.
It is often something that starts really within a person at a very young age. And you do have to go through the grieving process of, you lost a whole belief system, a whole community, or you just altered it. if you don't lose it entirely. And that alone can be very challenging.
That's wow. Yeah, that is a big issue. And I know for me personally, there was a lot of grieving that was involved during my healing journey. And there's a lot of things that you grieve. It's very complex and can be confusing. And so it's really important that you're talking about that with people and having somebody to bounce those thoughts off of and just like validate you and help you kind of like unravel it and put it together so that it makes sense as to like what is going on with me right now. Because you could leave the most abusive and toxic group out there and still be really sad about it.
Yeah.
Even though that you're making the right choice and still grieve the crap out of it.
Two things can exist at the same time.
That's called a dialectic.
Oh, God, it's like we're therapists. Yes, absolutely. So you can both, be grieving it and like still seek out that help to grieve, like to work through it too. Yeah. Any other like ideas on maybe like prevention measures?
It is really hard to prevent religious trauma from happening. It's about, I think, some of the big warning signs are like if a group is telling you what to do, what to think, that if they're getting upset with you for questioning things, that's a really big red flag and not normal. Groups should be okay with whoever you want to be.
Absolutely.
And so if they're trying to dictate who you are as a person, you might want to just double check that this is the right place for you.
Yeah.
If you start feeling those like icky feelings inside when you're in certain areas, like just do some reflection. Like, what is that all about? Like, what do you think? When do you feel this? Is it always in the same place, location, same topics being discussed? Your body might be trying to tell you something.
Yeah. Those are some good signs to look for. Absolutely. Yeah. When I was thinking of kind of the prevention of religious trauma, which, I mean, you can only prepare or prevent so much, but I took it from a lens of like parenting or leaders or, communities, and try and foster a healthy relationship with faith or with non-faith. So kind of, if you're a parent, teach critical thinking and, allow your kid to both express their belief and also question it, right? Yeah. Kind of what we talked about, what we try to do as therapists. We don't tell the person what to do. We're just there to help guide them, to help like them figure it out. So if you're a parent or you're a leader or you are in a community like this, it can be helpful to look at it from that, I don't know if prevention is the right word, but it can help prevent religious trauma if you keep it an open forum, an open conversation that encourages personal autonomy and reinforcing a person's own beliefs and what they think is, what sits right with them.
Yes, I love that. That was really good.
Yeah, it's getting towards the end of the day, so my words are struggling a little.
I hear that. Yeah, that's.
Any other thoughts on, how a person could get help with processing, working through religious trauma?
I think those are my main ones.
Okay. Yeah. This was one that I don't think we really talked about yet. How to live with or have relationships with people who hold different beliefs that may be the source of your trauma. What are your thoughts on that, man. Lucas?
Yeah, that's hard. Okay, well, let's just assume that it's a Christianity, let's say. But it's like a healthier form of Christianity. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about holds the exact same beliefs that were traumatizing to you?
I mean, I feel like you could really look at it from any lens, but let's look at it from the lens of you no longer have the same belief system as a family member or friend who has the belief system that was traumatizing to you, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think, okay, so everybody experiences things differently. And that does not mean that your situation or your feelings are invalid. It does not mean that you're overreacting. It does not mean that you're doing anything wrong. And it does not mean that their experiences and feelings are invalid or anything, or that they're doing things that are incorrect too.
Notice how Lucas said and, not
yes.
but.
I think that what I have to do, because I do have this, I experience this with extended family, not spouse or anything like that, but I have to purposefully disconnect the person from the belief, right? Like that is not who they are necessarily to me. And when I'm able to do that, it's just a lot easier for me to be around the person. It's just a lot easier for me to like handle my emotions when I see certain things or I hear certain topics maybe that are being brought up. And just giving yourself some grace there too. Like it's okay that you're being triggered. Not okay that you're being triggered, but like it's okay that you're having feelings.
Yes.
You know, and you can both love the person and also be uncomfortable with their beliefs at the same time. And that is how you do that specifically. You have to find that out. I think that's a very personal process of self-discovery.
Yes.
That way. But I think one of the best ways that working with other people and myself and all those things is really trying to disconnect the person from that. And then also having really good boundaries with people, right? So like, if like maybe having a boundary of them not trying to bring you back to the faith.
Yes.
You know, or having a boundary of like, I don't want to debate with you about things being real or not real or whatever.
Decide what topics are off limits.
And then just hold firm to that. Don't let them draw you into that. And if you need to move away from the situation, like physically get up and leave to make that happen, then do that. But yeah, those are I think the two big things.
Yeah, I agree with all of that 100%. And to like to build on what you were saying is that you get to decide the level of interaction and vulnerability you have with people.
Right. Yep.
And if you don't want to subject yourself to a harmful conversation or environment just because someone is family or a longtime friend, you don't have to. You don't owe a person something because they're your grandparent.
Right.
Like you have relationships with the people, not the relationship.
I love that.
Yeah. So, that's great. Setting boundaries. Go listen to Christy and I's podcast episode for more on that.
Because boundaries are sexy.
Boundaries are sexy. One other thing that I think you were also getting at with, having people in your life that believe in or have beliefs in the thing that traumatized you. Sometimes there comes a point when you have to accept that you can't change a person's mind, and that's okay. Like, you don't have control over another person's thoughts or actions, just like they don't have control over you. So, not everyone will understand religious trauma or why you left, modified your faith, whatever that looks like for you. And that's not your burden to carry.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lucas and I are giving you permission to say fuck you to other people if you want. Because at the end of the day, it's really about protecting your own mental health and your peace. And your well-being matters more than maintaining a relationship that causes you harm.
100% preach.
Yeah.
Which is
preach.
Ironic.
Is there anything else with this topic with religious trauma that you wanted to make sure that we touch on today, Lucas?
Only if you have another 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, let us know down below or in my email if you want more on this. I'm sure Lucas and I could do a ton with it. But thank you so much, Lucas, for being on with me today.
This was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great to talk about all the ways that we were traumatized and other people were traumatized. But
when you put it like that.
No. We created a source of community. Hopefully this is helpful to other people. But if you liked what you heard today, please leave 5 stars down below. Leave us a review. Share with the people in your life. If you want to send this to your parent or your old pastor who traumatized you and be like, yeah, this was you. Go ahead. And if you do send that, then my name is Carol, not Grace. But you can reach me on my Instagram at life.in.motion24. My email is life.motion24@gmail.com. TikTok is life_in_motion24. And you can listen to the podcast on pretty much all the streaming areas. So make sure to stay tuned in to hear all about Life in Motion. And until next week, embrace the chaos and find the beauty. Bye.